Well, good afternoon. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Jamie Pasquinelli, District Manager of ULI Pittsburgh. I'm so happy you could join us today to celebrate the Carnegie Mellon students that excelled in ULI's National Hines Awards program. As always, thank you to our sponsors that make our programming possible. A couple of housekeeping items. Please make sure you have your mics muted throughout the program to prevent any distractions. Also, we will be engaging in a Q&A after the presentation. Please insert your question in the chat at any point during the presentation, and we will address your question during the Q&A. The program will be recorded, so please keep your eyes open for an email from me, and additionally, follow us on social media as well. I would now like to introduce Valentina Vivacis, Special Faculty of Carnegie Mellon University School of Architecture, and Jonathan Klein, Associate Professor, Carnegie Mellon University School of Architecture, to start off our program. Valentina and Jonathan, take it away.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you for inviting us. We're really excited to be here and share the work that happened in January. So I'm going to share my screen. And I'm going to not be in presentation mode just because I think it'll work better for me. So my role is to just kick this off by telling you what the ULI Hines competition is and how it runs. And then I'm going to pass it over to Jonathan, who was the design advisor for the team that received an honorable mention nationally. And then the students will present their project. So I will not take too much time, but I just want to give you sort of the background. So this is the ULI Hines competition, H-I-N-E-S, because it's named after Gerald Hines, a developer who passed this year. This was his baby, let's say. So what is this competition? It's an urban planning and real estate development competition. It's for university students who are either in their 5th year of the B-ARC program or for the most part graduate students, and they need to be cross-disciplinary, which is part of the key of this experience and this program. So you'll see when you see the teams that it's a mixture of people from different disciplines. They had 2 weeks of intensity in January, which Jonathan will tell you about. And what happens is they receive a brief about a real site with real problems and really complicated piles of information. And it's their job to come up with an actual development proposal. The grand prize is $50,000 and finalists get $10,000 and a trip to the site to pitch their plans to the local decision makers. And we have with us today Diana Reid, who is a judge, and she's going to tell us about the judging process. This year, there were 105 teams, 525 students from 61 universities who entered. Each team has 5 students, and we had 4, so we had 20 students. And our team members all came from 3 places: the School of Architecture, which offers a variety of master's degrees, the Tepper School of Business, which is primarily MBAs, and the Hines College of Public Policy, which is primarily public policy management. So although we had 4 teams, today we're presenting the work of the team that received a national honorable mention. Just FYI, here's the past competition sites and the winning universities. And CMU has, placed quite a few times, but the last few years we've been trying to be more organized about entering and really working on this competition seriously. In 2017, we had a national finalist team, and I put their picture in here just because it's so nice to see them with Gerald Hines, and you might recognize Don Carter, who is a longtime ULI member and was the design advisor for that team. So here are the names of our wonderful competitors this year. Our 4 design advisors were Ray Gastel, Stefan Gruber, Don Carter, and Jonathan Klein. And these were our teams, which we named by color. Ready, set, go. So this was our process. Prior to the release of the brief, we had 3 sort of crash courses because typically students have already had some real estate education when they do this competition. But because of COVID and some changes in the curriculum, we were a little bit wonky and we had some students who had not had real estate. So we did 3 really intense sessions, including how to do financials. Then the brief was released, and then the students had 2 weeks of intensive meetings with each other, the design advisor, and myself. And the deliverables, generally speaking, are a board covered with drawings, a narrative description, spreadsheets, and a slideshow. So this is what the brief looks like, and this is really just the top of it, the tip of the iceberg, because there are, in fact, many, many links also to different reports and information about the site. So I'm going to pass it on to Jonathan, who's going to introduce our team members. Jonathan's an associate studio professor at the School of Architecture, where he has taught for 19 years. He's also a principal of the Studio for Spatial Practice, which is an urban design firm. And he has been an advisor multiple times on this competition. He's going to tell you a little bit about the process, and then he's going to introduce today's team, which is 5 students from various disciplines. So Jonathan, take it away.
Thank you, Valentina. So yeah, I'm just going to talk a little bit about how kind of what the students actually experience here, and then I'll introduce them and then really hand it off to them, and they'll give us a show of the project they did. As Valentina said, this is a really fast, intense competition for the students. It's only 2 weeks long, and the materials aren't released until the beginning of those 2 weeks. And so what the students are given are a site, which is, again, a surprise, and a project area that includes a series of parcels that are intended to be included, and essentially a set of design goals that the local team who has created the brief are articulating, and usually they're real design goals for that site. They also provide a whole series of links to CAD information, kind of base information, sometimes a computer model, and a number of previous planning documents that the students can look back on and kind of glean previous ideas from, look at the analysis of, etc. One of the things that's not provided, however, is a clear program brief of what uses ought to go on this site. And so it's up to the students to interpret the goals, understand the site, and then through their own proposal, develop a set of uses to go on the site. And a kind of coherent narrative about what those uses are and why they're the right thing, and perform a financial analysis of it. So through the two weeks, they generate some early ideas, typically work with their advisor to round them down, and then begin to refine the design and craft presentation materials. So the things that you'll see tonight. And because it's so fast, they have really, I'd say, kind of a week to figure out what their idea is about, and then another week to quickly produce a presentation. And that presentation includes both an urban design strategy with maps and 3-dimensional diagrams, kind of what uses are being proposed, as well as a supporting financial analysis. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So I had an opportunity to work with a really great team that, again, was a mix of students from different parts of Carnegie Mellon. So Sophie Abo is from the Hines College and is doing a Master of Public Policy and Management. We had Colleen from the School of Architecture, Colleen Duong, doing a Master of Sustainable Design. Raheel Reddy joined us from the Tepper School and is doing a Master of Business Administration. And then the last 2 team members are part of our Master of Architecture program, Sean O'Connor and Doris Zane. And they were fantastic to work with. I'd actually not met any of them before this process. And just for the audience's sake, we were doing this virtually. Some of them were not in Pittsburgh. And over the course of the last year and a half of teaching, the School of Architecture, like all schools of architecture around the world, has utilized a variety of software to be able to meet together like we are tonight, but also to collaboratively work on drawings and sketch together using a program called Miro. And so we used that process and were able to collaborate on developing the design. The students, I'm sure, did a lot of file sharing of CAD drawings and models and presentation files. But with that, I'm going to hand it off to them, and they're going to take you through their project.
Great. Thank you, Valentina and Jonathan, for the introduction. And thank you, ULI Pittsburgh, for giving us this opportunity to share our project, the Casey Knot, today. So as Jonathan and Valentina mentioned, on January 11th, the first day of the 2-week competition period, we attended a kickoff webinar where the competition site was announced. And after the webinar concluded, we were sent a 30-page competition brief with tons of information and links about the history and current issues facing the host city, the site topography and challenges, and specific goals and deliverables for the competition. This year's ULI Hines host city was Kansas City, Missouri. For those of you who don't know much about Kansas City, the 7,900 square mile city sits at the confluence of the Missouri and Kansas rivers. Founded in 1850 as a frontier town with a thriving cattle market, Kansas City became the center of American jazz culture in the 1920s, earning the name Paris of the Plains. Like most American cities, Kansas City succumbed to suburbanization and white flight in the 1950s and 60s, resulting in population loss and urban sprawl. This legacy lives on as Kansas City is famously one of the least dense cities in America. Over the last 20 years, Kansas City has experienced a renaissance with a thriving arts scene, growing entrepreneurial ecosystem, and winning sports teams. Kansas City's central business district, pictured here, is surrounded by several highways, and together these highways define the downtown loop. The competition site was in the eastern part of the downtown loop, adjacent to the government center and financial districts. The neighborhood is loosely referred to as the East Village. The competition site consisted of 8 city blocks, or approximately 16.2 acres of land. Zooming in on the site, you can see that most of the land is currently used as surface parking lots. There's one existing apartment complex embedded in the site, but for the most part, there are very few people living in the East Village right now. The goal of the competition was to provide a comprehensive vision and proposal to transform that site into a thriving, mixed-use, mixed-income neighborhood. We were challenged to understand the social, demographic, political, and economic forces shaping Kansas City today. We had to analyze the competition site, determine a market-supported redevelopment plan, and propose an urban design scheme for the study area. We were required to create a market-feasible development program and pro forma, determine relevant subsidies, as well as a return on the entire project. This year, ULI judges were looking for proposals that would catalyze regional and local economic impacts, increase sustainability and resilience, consider issues of equity and housing affordability, and challenge current assumptions about parking and automobile-oriented development. As a team, we dove into that dense competition brief and other resources to understand the history and context of the site in Kansas City. We identified industry clusters, gaps in housing and business services, strategic partners, and market feasible concepts. During our research, we identified a demonstrated need for wet lab office space in the city. We also found that demand for wet lab office space is projected to continue to grow after the pandemic. So building off of this unique real estate need and Kansas City's agricultural history and further site analysis, we centered our project concept on 3 central pillars: connectivity, transit-oriented community, and then life sciences, past, present, and future. I'll now pass it off to Colleen to talk about those pillars.
So this drawing we made helps explain the 3 pillars we focused on when designing this project. The idea of connectivity, the idea of a transit-oriented community, and the idea of creating a connection between the past, present, and future with a focus on life sciences. These three pillars focus on embracing the socioeconomic and racial diversity that exists within the city and encourages sustainable transportation and equitable job growth and innovation. The hope of these three pillars is to weave together multiple communities that have been historically segregated and create fertile ground for next generation life science research and enterprises to take root in place of automobile-oriented development. The first pillar is connectivity. As mentioned, the study area is an urban island that is surrounded by multi-lane highways that separate distinct neighborhoods and communities in Kansas City from its urban core. The KC Knot seeks to create connections between the East Village, Paseo West, Columbus Heights, Downtown, and East Crossroads and Hospital Hill neighborhoods to help mend this fractured urban fabric that was created through automobile-oriented redevelopment and redlining over the years. This idea is tied together by a series of pedestrian and bicycle-friendly axes and mixed-income housing to create a vibrant common ground for the communities of Kansas City to live, work, play, and grow together as one. The second pillar is creating a sustainable transit-oriented community. Across the street to the south of our site is the newly constructed East Village Transit Center that begins to encourage the use of public transportation through the city. The KC Knot challenges historical automobile-centric norms through a new transit-oriented design and development. We plan to limit underground automobile parking to incentivize visitors, employees, and residents to choose alternative modes of transportation when traveling to and from the site. With this idea, we plan to design a pedestrian and cyclist pathway to encourage an alternate mode of transportation outside of automobile use. The third and last pillar is a focus on life sciences. Kansas City has a history of acting as America's AG Tech and animal health corridor with a focus on life science innovation. We hope to enhance this strong history with life sciences by creating new job opportunities, especially with post-pandemic job growth, in partnership with some existing organizations in Kansas City, such as the Sprout Workforce Development Center, to create these new opportunities and train residents from neighboring communities in these new roles, and with the University of Missouri, Kansas City's Office of Technology Commercialization to support university-affiliated entrepreneurs and academics in this field of research. With these ideas, the KC Knot hopes to act as a life science cluster to support this economic transportation and equitable learning and job growth opportunities. And these are the three pillars that we focused on when we began to design and organize our project development, which Doris will be talking about now.
The study area is currently an urban island surrounded by multi-line highways that separate distinct neighborhoods and communities of Kansas City from its urban core. Kansas City's historical policies and past urban planning have created fractured urban fabric through automobile-oriented development and redlining. The donut show the composition of the population. We found that Columbus and Paseo West neighborhood have very different demographic characteristics and income levels compared to the neighborhoods to the west side. These two neighborhoods have a higher percentage of African American residents and the income level is lower. Our site sits in between the more wealthy neighborhoods and the lower income neighborhoods, which could potentially tie those two neighborhoods with different characteristics together. There are multiple lines of public transit connecting our site to surrounding neighborhoods. There is also a new bus center to the south of the site. They are quite underused for now, but we see it as an opportunity for transit-oriented development. When beginning our design, we started by studying the surrounding sites and gaining an impression of the community of these sites and the feeling of them so that we wouldn't design a development that was completely foreign to the surrounding neighborhoods. For example, when studying the downtown area, which is directly to our site, we noticed that it was a dense urban development with a large population of largely living younger residents that were potentially in the tech industry. And while studying Paseo West, the neighborhood directly to the east of our site across the highway, we noticed that it was a low density urban outskirt with large families that had little income. We wanted to design a development that transitioned from a highly dense neighborhood to the low dense neighborhood, offering opportunities for both communities. The KC North seeks to create better connection to the surrounding neighborhoods. Majority of the people would come to the site from Paseo West neighborhood and the new transit center, along with other entry points to the KC North. Those entrances generate two major points of interaction, and that's where the main public spaces of the project will be. There is a series of public spaces in front of the buildings, creating a green spine connecting the sites, and a series of cow statues will be placed along the green spine to capture the history of Kansas City. 9th Street, Home Street, and Charlotte Street are the main access of the site. Those three streets will be renovated to challenge historical automobile-centric norms through pedestrian and cyclist-friendly as well as transit-oriented design development. The Cat-Free Homes Greenway runs along the spine of the KC North, connecting historically disenfranchised eastern neighborhoods with the job opportunities via the 9th and Charlotte Street bike arterials. The entrance to the KC North sits diagonally from the new transit center and hosts a multimodal hub with the rides KC bicycles and a drop-off zone for the transportation network companies. When we were designing this, we brainstormed what kinds of people would actually use and come to this development. The photos to the left of the site plan are the types of people we wanted to attract to the KC North. For example, people from Paseo West will come to business incubators to work towards opening up their own shops, or come to the Workforce Development Center for job training. Chemistry and biology students would come to do research and meet friends at a local brewery. Mixed income apartments would accommodate students, professionals working in and around the KC North, as well as people who need affordable housing. The south side of the project is primarily residential and commercial spaces where all the shops are and where the main entrance is. It is also close to the famous Power and Light District, which is to the southwest of the site. The north side is mostly job opportunities. There are offices and labs. We developed a spatial program that was shaped by the green spaces. Each plot has some public spaces that makes up the green spine. And I'll pass on to Sean to talk about the green spine sustainability.
All right, as Doris mentioned, a major part of our project was the development of a greenway along Home Street, which created a vital network connecting East Village to the adjacent neighborhood of Crossroad over the 670 highway. This is what we refer to as the green spine of our project that connects the multiple green spaces branching off of Home Street. The following slide showcases a study of how to adjust the existing street dimensions to accommodate cyclists, allow for public transit access, and give generous amounts of space to pedestrians. The green spine is a carless street that promotes sustainable transit and allows the freedom for more pedestrian movement. The results of our study create a promenade for pedestrians and cyclists while allowing for bus access. We expanded the sidewalk 6 feet on the west side and 18 feet on the east side to welcome the circulation of pedestrians. A two-way bike lane stretches across the street and links with 9th Street, leading to an access linking Paseo West and downtown, and Charlotte Street, which links to the adjacent neighborhood of Columbus Park. The Greenways Bus Lane connects with existing bus schedules, easily connecting it to the rest of the city. The green spine forms an anchor drawing in pedestrians and cyclists through the permeability of the building's form, which creates a connected network of green public spaces. In addition to the green spaces on the ground level, the site also features more privatized green roofs, which expand upon the existing green space. Green roofs simultaneously allow for relief from the urban heat island effect, an issue with the undeveloped East Village from the plethora of paved parking lots. Those roofs that are not utilized for green space host solar panels that provide localized energy to the development. In order to bring the large green spaces and sustainability themes to the community level, a rain garden on Holmes and 10th Street adds educational opportunities about stormwater management and agriculture. The rain garden also bolsters community ownership by acting as an interstitial space for community members to bond over a building and maintaining something together. In addition to the rain garden, 10th and Holmes host the museum, whose form creates a public installation in and of itself. The large block on top of the plinth-like ground level building creates a visual focal point, drawing residents to the large public staircase and swath of green space. The following section goes into deeper detail specifying the museum's program as well as the various programs for buildings on the east side of the site featuring different sustainable systems. Starting on the south or left side of the section, the existing transit center is greeted by exterior short-term bike parking with interior long-term bike parking inside the building, encouraging bike-oriented transit. Cutting through the southernmost building shows how the Casey Knott residential complexes have retail, commercial, and or amenity space on the ground floor with co-living and shared common space style residents above. The next block features a business incubator on the ground floor or the Sprout Workforce Development Center connecting to the museum, which focuses on agriculture related exhibitions. The next block features a collab lab on the ground floor acting as a link between the above green offices and the community garden and public space by the museum. On the final block to the westmost side of the site or rightmost side of the section shows the program for the biotech offices, which, similar to the previous block, connect offices to the public with an accessible makerspace. In addition, the offices have underground parking to maintain public space on the ground level. And I'll pass to Raheel to talk more about phasing and financials.
So when we considered the phasing of our project, we had to trade off between making it financially sustainable as well as creating more density in the community and attracting people to come and work there as well as stay there. After much discussion, we decided to prioritize developing the community in order to create density within the neighborhood. So first, we focused on building our office spaces. We felt that this would bring in employees who work in life sciences, biotechnology, as well as green technology. To supplement this, we also wanted to develop a small amount of residential space for a few employees in these offices who wanted to live close to where they work. In addition to this, there was also a little bit of retail and gym space that was developed to supplement the office space. A good portion of our parking, in fact, a majority of our parking was going to be developed in phase one because we felt that the people who were going to be using the office space would also require car parking. In phase two, we moved on from building enterprise and we wanted to start building a community around this theme of life sciences and around the office space and the density that we have attracted. So we did feel that after a few years, the site would become a popular area in Kansas City, and this would create an increased demand for our residential apartments and allow us to generate higher revenues in terms of rent. Therefore, most of the construction in this phase is of residential space. However, we did not only want to focus on people who live in the community, but we also wanted to integrate all the communities around the site into this phase. Therefore, we decided to develop our business incubator, museum, and trade school in this phase. This would help provide great opportunities for overall community learning and development. Again, we had to construct parking and retail gym space to support our residential customers under this phase. Next up, I'll be talking about the financials of this project. So this is a small summary of our whole pro forma. I do understand that you're probably not able to read it in detail, and I'm happy to discuss this in detail with anyone who might be interested. But we have a slide here which just summarizes some of our key figures. So despite providing some key socially oriented facilities as well as community development facilities, we achieved an unlevered IRR of 12% and a levered IRR of 23%. There were many key companies as well as other institutions that we seek to partner with and collaborate with in order to make this project feasible and efficient and effective. For instance, for our trade school, we wanted to partner up with the University of Missouri, Kansas to help them develop a presence in the downtown. We also wanted to ensure that the University of Missouri, Kansas can provide good employment training to many people in and around our community. In order to improve our mobility, we wanted to partner up with Bike Walk KC, create a good platform for people to come ride their bikes as well as use some of the other bike rental features. For our business incubator, we wanted to partner up with some of Kansas City's as well as American famous incubators such as Casey Reining and the Kansas City, such as Casey Reining, Rising. So we felt that these people would provide good opportunities of mentorship for the community, for the people working there, for any group that seeks to develop their businesses, and for a whole set of entrepreneurs. We also felt that this would be a good opportunity for these people to raise investment. The entrepreneurs trying to raise investment could do it through an incubator such as Casey Rising. We wanted to partner with the Kansas City Life Sciences Museum for our museum, try to develop an agriculture-focused museum that is built and in support of the theme of our entire community. Finally, for the rest of our project, we also wanted to partner up with Kansas City Science City, try to build our office space around this theme of life sciences, and also develop some of our co-working space using the themes from some of the Science City stuff. So after these projects, the next stuff comes to the cost of the project. So we estimated this to be around $700 million. And we estimated our positive NPV to be around $70 million. So around 70% of this is going to be funded in terms of a convertible loan. So first we would raise the money in terms of a construction loan and then convert it into a permanent loan. We'd actually assumed an interest rate of around 6% for the construction loan and 5% for the permanent loan. The other 26% would be put in from the developer side as developer equity. And we also made use of some very nice programs that helped subsidize the products project and made it a lot more affordable. So for instance, to develop some of our facilities such as the business incubator and the museum, we wanted to use the NMTC funding, the new market tax credits. We also wanted to use LIHTC equity for our affordable housing funding, where we assumed 20% of our entire housing to be affordable. And we also made use of the block grant program. And as I mentioned about, once we raised this money, we want the different uses. A good portion of it went to office space development, as well as residential development costs. And even the other aspects were constructions of like some of our retail, gym, and parking spaces. We did assume a few additional charges, such as financing fees, to ensure that our calculations were comprehensive. Moving on to this diagram, which is titled Low Income Community Development. This showcases the amount of impact we're able to make through this project. So for a standard 2-bedroom unit, the market rate of within our community, as well as in the neighborhood in and around, was around $1,258 per month. And we were able to provide nearly a 25% discount on that for our affordable housing. Additionally, we didn't want to only focus on our housing and talking about affordable office space. We were able to provide our business incubator at nearly 50% the price of market rate office space in downtown Kansas City and the rest of our community. We felt that this would give a great opportunity for communities, especially towards the east, to become entrepreneurial and to set up their organizations within this community. Finally, moving on, for our long-term vision, we hope to grow eastwards, and we hope to blend in all our communities together. And there's a small bridge which acts as a barrier between these multiple communities, and we think growing eastwards can help us overcome this barrier and integrate all the communities together. So this is just one image of what we want our community to look like. There is great mobility, good density, and a community centered around life sciences. We named our project the KC Knot because we wanted to tie together communities from across Kansas City. We wanted to break the barriers that have segregated the community racially. We wanted to provide an opportunity for everyone, an opportunity to learn and succeed while honoring Kansas City's agricultural roots. Thank you so much, and we're happy to take any questions you might have.
Great job, guys. Thank you so much. Before we go to questions, I know we have one in the chat already. I think there's a couple in the chat. I wanted to introduce, we have a special guest, a juror from the ULI Hines competition, Diana Reid, who is an independent director, a ULI trustee, and ULI Foundation governor, and such a huge part of ULI Pittsburgh. Thank you, Diana, for coming to talk a little bit about your experience as a juror and the tough decisions that you had to make. So I will hand it over to you.
Sure, thank you. And I will be brief on this because I have a few questions of my own I want to ask, and I liked the questions in the chat. So first and foremost, I want to congratulate the team on the submission and on the honorable mention, and all the teams for their submissions. I think what's special about this. What's special about the competition for ULI and for the ULI members who serve on the jury is it's really an opportunity for us to get insight into what the future of urban planning and urban design really looks like, and really get inspired by the skills and the knowledge and the teamwork, really. As you demonstrated in your presentation today, one of the critical elements of this competition is bringing together the financial expertise, the design expertise, the sustainability expertise all together, and the public policy focus in order to really help build a new community. And you did exactly that. It was a fun but exhausting, in the same way you had 2 intensive weeks to put together your submission. The jury basically, once you had submitted it, the ULI staff went through it and then basically loaded all of the presentations like yours onto a site. And there were 16 jurors plus myself, and also 6 members from the ULI Kansas City team to review everything. We broke up into teams. We reviewed all of the submissions in teams. We came down to push forward into finals, and we debated all of the designs to come up with who the honorable mentions were. What the jury, in the notes I took in the discussion about Casey Knott, that was really remarkable. And I will tell you, yours was one of the presentations that the jury members actually thought there must be somebody on the team who has seen the site, who understands Kansas City. Or somebody on the team did some really great research to understand the complexity of the stakeholders, the complexity of the history of that neighborhood. And what you brought to life was a re-envisioned East Village neighborhood within the Kansas City metro that embraced the racial diversity, the socioeconomic diversity, and encouraged the sustainable transportation modes. Really impressive on that, and also put forward a feasible plan for equitable job growth and innovation. We were especially impressed by your complete streets and how they wove together the communities that have been historically segregated. Your transportation and transit modes were really fantastic, but also having the basis for building the life sciences, the research, and the enterprises to take root there. So it was a really impressive submission. The final comment was how much the jury really admired the long-term vision, very clear mission statement, but to address old physical and old racial divides, focusing on the multimodal transportation, but also really building into it a new neighborhood that was viable and financially viable. Yours is one of the financial programs that was really held together, and was bold yet realistic and possible. So really congratulations to the whole team. And thank you for giving me the experience to be able to review your submission and all the submissions from CMU. And I'm so glad we can highlight yours today. So I think with that, turn it back to Jamie, and let's go to the questions in the chat.
Thank you, Diana. That was awesome. Sounds like a really great experience.
It was.
So let's hop to the Q&A. This one is from Ray Gastile. Ray, do you want to pop on and ask your question?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to ask. One is a very kind of detailed question. It's just like, also, it's a great project today. We just throw up our hands and say we're never going to have underground parking. It's not even worth discussing because the cost per square foot. So since you guys got these plaudits for your financial acumen, how the heck can you afford it? But then we can go on to other questions. We can skip past parking if you don't want to, and we'll get on to the heat island, which both Susie and I want to know more about. But first, just because the price per square foot, and I'm just calculating in my head. It's back in the envelope. It's a big building. As you know, underground parking costs like as much to build an apartment. So how did you grapple with it?
I can talk a little bit about our approach to parking in general, and then I think I'm going to pass it off to Raheel to talk more about the financials of making that work. We really wanted to focus on alternative transportation in our project because it was really emphasized in the brief. Kansas City, as we discussed, has, it's really quite spread out, and because of that, everyone drives. And so how can we rethink that for the new Kansas City? And we also noticed that there's this new transit center that was built, I think in 2020, so really in the last year. And so we also really want to leverage that and support these investments that have been made in public transportation. And so we wanted to have like a multimodal hub catty-cornered to that transit center. So transportation network companies, lifts, scooters, all of that good stuff. And also when we were doing a lot of our research, the Mayor Q, tweeted a lot about, how much of the parking in downtown Kansas City was vacant all the time. And so like from a political feasibility standpoint, we knew that we didn't need to include a lot of new parking construction in our proposal because I think that the political leaders would be aligned with our vision. But as far as how we made the underground parking work, I will pass that on to Raheel to talk about.
Yeah, so actually, based on that analysis, we based on what Sophie just said, we actually got quite lucky that there was a lot of vacant parking in and around the site. So we thought that, and also thinking of it from a long-term perspective, we didn't think that we needed to have extensive parking. And that's one of the reasons why our underground parking was feasible. And in terms of financial assumptions, we assumed that the underground parking costs twice as much as above ground structured parking. So like maybe going one level above versus one level below, we thought it cost twice as much. And we did a research. We also tried to take a quotation from one company that was basically charging hard costs, and this was an approximate estimate of what we considered our parking costs to be. And also the square footage, as Sophie mentioned, of our parking was quite small, so it didn't have a significant impact on the rest of our financials because we all hope to move towards more multimodal community for sure.
Yeah, I think that's the heart of it. Like, because you're not providing one-to-one, or you're not assuming, you're because of the limit. It's because I looked at the percentages didn't seem crazy. I was like, how is it? But I wasn't looking at the square footage closely enough. So that's a great approach, and I appreciate that. But it's interesting that you weren't quite ready to go all the way and not even have it.
Yeah.
you weren't quite ready to say no parking.
Right. But interestingly, Ray, one of the interesting, and I applaud your team for either reading between the lines or doing extra research and understanding the political framework in Kansas City, because what the Kansas City site presenters were really hoping for and wanting is they didn't want any more parking, and they didn't feel that Kansas City needed it, and there's a whole lot of other reasons. So you read between the lines very well to not overemphasize any more parking necessary. And one other point before you go to the next question, Valentina noted it, but I should note, while I was thrilled and excited when the ULI staff let us know where the teams were from, the jury was a totally blind jury, and all submissions, all 110 submissions, are submitted by number and have a number on it. And nobody on the jury knew where any of the submissions were from until after we had decided and voted on what the honorable mentions were and who the finalists were. So we didn't know where anybody, any of the teams came from. And it's always a fun surprise when we do the final reveal for the jury.
I think I made a strong pitch to the team early on to really think hard about transit and parking and aggressive reduction of parking.
Yeah, it was very well done.
And I believe there was a part 2 to that question.
Well, the part 2 was one that just more about the heat island effect. I mean, is every street shaded? Do I have lots of trees? I mean, I know it's unfair, but I think of Kansas City in summer as being somewhat uncomfortable. So I just wanted to know, like, really hot. And I just wanted to know whether you were creating sort of deliberate shade strategies and sort of a little bit more about that. Because I understood the green roof heat island discussion, but really just more on at grade and the kind of experiential version of it, how to keep sort of cool without, maybe even wind strategies or something. So just curious about how you thought about that. Because to create your world where everybody's happy walking, because as you know, again, I hate to generalize, but in summer in Kansas City, there's not a whole lot of walking around. I know this in my heart, and also from other information, and that's because there's these endless parking lots and it's hot. And I know that's not always the case, but you're creating an alternative, and I'm just curious a little bit more about it.
Yeah, I brought up the heat island effect so I can talk a little bit about the strategies we incorporated. We did think a lot about lighting, kind of when thinking about the vertical development of the space. So the northernmost part of the space, we kind of wanted to get light to penetrate, but also provide a lot of shading. So we kind of had like the taller buildings on the site towards the north end, and then shorter ones towards the south end. So there was still light, but at the same time, the vertical developments were also creating these kind of interior courtyards that were shaded, and those aspects that aren't shaded, there's a lot of tree canopy that's providing shading to alleviate that urban heat island effect. And then in addition, like I said before, the green roofs are kind of also playing a part in preventing that. And when compared to the site before, which was pretty much just blocks and blocks of parking lots, the microclimate should be, a little bit more cooler, hopefully, if our strategies worked right.
That's awesome. We have a question for Diana. It's from Jonathan Klein. Diana, I would be very curious to hear more about how the jury considered proposals locating a stadium on the site versus solutions like this one that did not.
Sure. So I think the statistic was, I think of the 110 submissions, I think eight or nine of them included a ballpark. And for your information, the Kansas City site people were sort of hoping for a ballpark, although they didn't get it in the winter, but they did get it in two of the finalists. Of the 20 or so or 25 or so top submissions that were debated among the jury heavily, I think I recall four different stadium designs. What was compelling about including a stadium design was the ability to then link to the history of Kansas City. Kansas City was where Jackie Robinson was playing. Josh Gibson, who's a Pittsburgh great, was playing also for the Monarchs. And there are really legends from the Negro baseball leagues that were playing in Kansas City. And in fact, the Negro Leagues Hall of Fame is in Kansas City. So the compelling reason to include a baseball park was really being able to sort of include the history of Kansas City. However, that said, the challenge of including one is really it's a pretty small site to be able. I mean, including a baseball stadium really takes up about 1/3 of the entire site that you're planning, and so you have to be pretty careful in doing it right and not creating just an island, because you have to have things that go along with it. So there were some really interesting designs, and I think that a few of those designs will probably be asked to come and present in Kansas City. But at the end of the day, the finalists did not, the winning competition did not include a stadium. It's a tough thing to do, to create that destination. But there were some good attempts. There were some good attempts.
I felt gratified that the winning one didn't have one.
Well, let me tell you, there was a lot of debate. So,
Diana, there was a follow-up question. How did they pay for the stadium bond issue? Assume the would pay?
Yeah, actually, that's a very good point. Probably one of the other challenges, for the teams that did include the stadium, one of them actually it was how do you pay for it? And you can certainly throw in bond financing. One of the proposals I recall that had a stadium basically had the owner of the team paying not only for the build of the stadium, but also for the build of a hotel complex right next to the stadium, which we thought was a pretty unrealistic that any owner of a team would actually pay for the stadium. So the financing of it is also a real obstacle, and I think probably one of the reasons that most teams did not include it, because it's a tough one to do. And it takes up so much of your neighborhood. You know, there's not a whole lot of cities that can create a stadium like PNC Park in Pittsburgh, which is really part of downtown, a little bit away, and actually has development around it that is vital and useful. But you know, there's not a lot of cities that can really support that.
Great, thank you. Any other questions?
Well, just one question about how, I mean, you guys did an amazing job in terms of connecting it to Kansas City, at least for
Yes.
Not being from Kansas City. I don't know how good, but it sure looked good in terms of your attention to all kinds of different parts of the public sector, private sector, academic sector. But the big question is, was it, I can't really recall, was it sort of in the brief, or was it really you that said the life sciences focus? Was that really your team sort of came to the conclusion that this was a way to go? Because it gave a coherence to the project that allowed all sorts of things to tie in about how you're going to connect Paseo, you know, which is a very high bar, but you know, unless you say you're going to try, it's not going to, that doesn't happen. But so, I mean, a high bar in the sense that there's life sciences may not have all the job opportunities, and there's sort of training implications, a million other things in terms of just setting it there doesn't mean that the life sciences activity there will necessarily benefit those neighborhoods. But you thought about all kinds of things. But so that you guys just sort of looked at Kansas City, looked at the recent sort of statements by the mayor, looked, how'd you kind of come to your vision? Someone has to answer.
I can start off, and then if the rest of the team has things to add, please do. In you know, as I'm sure you're familiar with, the brief has so many links to strategic plans by all the different organizations. And I remember reading one of those, actually in a few of the strategic plans, there was an outlined a need for a certain amount of wet lab space, that this was like a recurring demonstrated need in downtown Kansas. And we were also thinking about, you know, office space post-COVID, what is that going to look like? And had read several articles about how wet lab space in general is something that you know doesn't translate to virtual work, and so will be a continued need for that. So that kind of drove our life science concept, and then you know thinking more broadly about Kansas City and its agricultural history, and you know it doesn't have like an anchor institution like CMU or Pitt, but you know UMKC definitely does have life science research coming out of it. And you know, another thing that we found was that UMKC was looking for kind of like a satellite campus downtown. And so we said, oh, you know, this could, you know, draw in university, draw in this wet lab space. You know, this is also a good career that doesn't necessarily need like a graduate degree or a 4-year college degree. So we're also thinking about, you know, what does workforce development look like? How do we connect these neighborhoods? So that's kind of how like this spiraling life science concept came together. Anyone else have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I can kind of talk a little bit about the whole idea of connection. I think one of our initial impressions when first seeing the site, that it was pretty much an island created by a highway, and just kind of like learning about the history of urban renewal and highways here in Pittsburgh. You know, highways are barriers that separate a lot of like socioeconomic demographics and racial demographics and things like that. So I think based off of that, we kind of did research on like demographics and what was going on in the other surrounding neighborhoods, and realized that there's this really stark divide that was happening. And when going into kind of further research, we heard of, you know, the Truce Wall and that whole idea that the city was segregated, you know, along that line that was right near our site. So I think because of that, we very highly prioritized connection between, you know, not only Paseo West, but also the surrounding neighborhoods, which had a lot of different demographics. Like there are a lot of families living north. There was kind of this budding younger tech scene to the south. And then there were a lot of disenfranchised communities to the west.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Great. We just had a comment from Tamara Dudukovic, our ULI District Council Chair. She said that this is very impressive. Congratulations to the team and their advisors. Excited for you to bring your talents to the real estate development profession. So great job, everybody. Any other comments or questions? Valentina?
I just want to say that all the, you know, we did, not all our teams received an honorable mention, but all our teams did an extremely good job. Everybody worked so hard and was so dedicated. And, you know, for our other 3 teams who aren't present, they also did a wonderful job. And really, as a group, we were extremely proud of everybody. They really just worked so hard and really put their best foot forward. So I just want to say that.
I would also add that this is we'd mentioned before we kind of got in the meeting that CMU has participated fairly consistently over the years, but we've sometimes not. And this is the first year that Valentina has been running a course that's kind of an organized effort for CMU to participate, and she did an amazing job. It was great. Much better organized now. So hopefully in future years, CMU will kind of have a strong presence in the ULI competition.
Thank you.
We're all clapping for Valentina.
Well, I'll tell you our secret, we'll share our secret now, which is that every day we had a trivia contest where we had like, what's the best recipe for cornbread? And what did Mayor Q think about this? And it turned into this really hilariously fun experience of just enjoying learning about Kansas City and all their very quirky backstory. So that was fun.
Right. Great.
Any other questions, comments? Well, I mean, I would like to say that I am extremely impressed. That was 2 weeks of work. It was amazing, and you all should be so proud of yourself. This is a great honor, and you have amazing professors, Valentina and Jonathan, Ray is advisor, Diana is a juror. So many great people are involved in this awards program. I hope to spread the word about this. Hopefully the recording will get it out, and we'll celebrate you some more.
Absolutely. Hey, Jamie,
Diana?
if I could add my
Yeah.
thanks, but also a recommendation to all of the team members from the CMU teams. So at ULI, there will likely be, I don't think it's been announced yet, but there will likely be a free student membership to all of the competitors in ULI to sign up. And I would definitely, as you approach your recruiting and your interviewing slots, and you're thinking about the future of your career, I would urge you to get your profile on LinkedIn, because you and all the other ULI Hines competition teams are all over ULI LinkedIn. You can link into ULI Kansas City, which will, trust me, they want to keep talking about every submission for their city for a while, and make those connections there to really make sure that it is visible. This is a real tribute to you to have participated in what everyone knows in the business is a grueling competition, and the fact that you did that and participated, use that to your recruiting and career development advantage, and make sure and get yourself out there, participate in ULI, and make those connections work for you. And connect with me on LinkedIn if you would like to talk further about any city that you are looking for your next big career move for. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to talk to you about that and how you can leverage this to your benefit for your career.
Thank you, Diana. That's awesome. Well, that's great. And I think that pretty much concludes our program for today. Again, this is recorded. Thank you to everybody that participated. Thank you, Casey, Knott team, Valentina, Jonathan, Ray, Diana. You all are awesome. And then the other teams, I believe we have some other students on the call too that were participants in this awards. So kudos to you as well. It's a lot of work. So, well, I will let you get on with your evening, and we hope to see your faces soon. Have a great evening, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
So much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.